another episode of Ctrl, Alt, Speak. My name is Chris Pallett, for those of you that don't recognise my dulcet tones. And this week I have the pleasure of Carrie Stokes from Spotlight Accounting. Carrie, hello.
Hi, thank you, Chris, and thanks for inviting me to come on to this.
Absolute pleasure. Couldn't not do it. So, I don't know if you've worked it out, but you realise it's been about 15 years that you've been... 15 years that you've been doing the accounts for us here.
Yes, you're one of my first customers.
Wow.
When I first started Spotlight. And we've just been chatting about how well your journey's been going since the conversations we were having 15 years ago compared to the conversations we're having today.
Well, hi Chris, here's your tax bill.
I now feel like the Grim Reaper rather than the...
Yeah, but as I said, Carrie, it's a good problem to have, because if we're paying tax, then okay, yeah, sure, Rishi's going to get his pound of flesh. He's going to get it one way or another. But it means that in terms of the journey that we're on, we're doing something okay.
100%. And it's great seeing the hard work and effort it's taken to get the business where it is now, and it's great seeing a business flourish in these really tough times.
Yeah, well, I think the testament to that is obviously last year with 23-25% growth, Q4 entirely through lockdown, and we still pull that sort of growth off. It just shows bloody hard work. Great bunch of guys outside.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough about me for the moment. Let's tell us about Spotlight and your journey. So obviously 15 years for us, lots of stuff. What's been going on? How long have you been in business now?
So I started business back in 2005. I worked for a large accountancy practice. I was based in London through part of it, and I just did not like corporate life. I didn't like the corporate politics. I didn't like the constant competition with other people to get to the top of the ladder, and I just found that I was being charged out at a ridiculous rate, just playing the game within the practice rather than helping business owners. And I felt that I had got a great background that I came from, highlights of which involved working in the forensic department and tracing money laundering through a drug racket in Liverpool.
Nice.
Yeah, to working on a case with...
So you got any left?
It was absolutely fascinating just seeing how all the cash flowed, really. To working on a celebrity suing Virgin Media and doing a case for Virgin Media. And it was great, and I enjoyed the work, but I just did not enjoy the politics. And I just felt like I was a bit of a chargeable time, racking up sort of bill. It was about the billing and not about the client service. You know, when we were concentrating on charging by the hour, we weren't, I just wanted to, as an accountant, your job is to serve clients. It's about the client experience. It's not about how much money I can rack up on your account. It's about what we do and the value we add for the business. So that's when, in 2006, I came out of the home and I took the risk and took an office and became Joseph Lewis Accountancy. And that's when I met you and we started working with Bespoke. And between 2006 and 2010, I built up a really strong practice. But I was pregnant with my first child, and I just felt that work had overtaken a bit. So for me, I took the decision that I needed to sell the practice and get a better work-life balance. So for the best part of 10 years, I worked part-time at home, kept a portfolio of clients, including Bespoke.
Yeah. Because I think you said that was because we were interested.
Yeah. No offence to those clients that went with the sale. And then,
sorry.
Worked part-time while the children were little. And I loved it because I had the best of both worlds. I got to come out and have meaningful conversation with business owners and help business owners with their growth journey, help them with their tax planning, help them really. Sometimes you're just that one person that business owners can confide in because you know the ins and outs of the numbers of the business, and they just feel like, sometimes you just have conversations about personal life, you have conversations about personal goals, and that's the bit I enjoy, because at the end of the day your business is a mechanism to give you the goals for what you want in your lifestyle.
and I guess that personal touch then humanises it, and it's not just about looking at accounts, crunching numbers in Excel.
No, it's not just about saying, oh, here's your tax bill of X amount of pounds, see you next year. It's about, here's, that the tax bill to me is the sort of like, it's not the nice bit, but that's the sort of the final bit, if that makes sense. To me, it's more about the relationship and being that sounding board for clients that just, I have all sorts of like, entrepreneurial clients that just come up with the most wackiest of ideas. And sometimes it's just having that someone to chew the fat with and just go through. When I was in semi-retirement, as my husband puts it, I was working 2.5 days a week with my small client base, and I was off 2.5 days a week with the children. Then when my children went to school, I loved being a mum and I loved working part-time, but it was my time now, and it was, for me, one of my personal goals is travelling with the kids and making the most of them while it's cool to spend time with mum and dad.
Yeah. Whilst you can still get cuddles and affection.
Yeah.
And, Mum.
Or why they're at that age where, we took them to San Francisco and went over the Golden Gate Bridge with them. And while they're at that age, they want to do that and they want to see those things. And I want to enjoy my children, really, rather than just see that, they are so fascinating with the things they come out with, and they're.
Is Will still into his darts?
He's into his darts, into his football, and they've just got these amazing minds, and I just want to tap in on that and enjoy those experiences. Now, working 2 days a week didn't quite provide the profits that I needed to fund that lifestyle, so that's why, when my eldest started school, semi-retirement ended, and it was time to build up the practice again. Now, I was called Carrie Stokes Limited at the time because I had to under my sale agreement.
Right.
And what I was finding is, obviously, Carrie Stokes Limited, the business centralised around me. So that's where I decided, 12 months ago, that I needed to start the rebranding process to Spotlight Accounting. The other reason behind the rebrand is, traditionally when we first met and when we first started working with you, an accountant would typically have your books and records sort of 5 to 6 months after the year end.
Yeah.
So you'd then come along just a month before the deadline, trot in with the tax bill, and you'd be talking about last year's financials. Now, to me, the whole world's changed since then in business. I mean, if we were talking about last year's financials now, the impact of COVID hasn't fully been reflected in those figures.
Yeah.
So I found a bit like businesses were operating in the blind, the blind, really not seeing their, the true reflection of their financial position. So one of the big developments for me that's been during my semi-retirement and now with Spotlight is the cloud accounting and Xero. And not just cloud accounting, for me, it's opened up the ability for all businesses of all sizes to have the financial information they need to run their business. So my relationship with my clients in that time has completely spun 360. So instead of coming out and talking about, like we've just run through your accounts now, your accounts are the byproduct of our conversation. Most of the conversation has been about what's going on this year, how's your profitability this year, what are the key drivers of your business, Chris, what can we change so you can get the information you need to concentrate on the areas that you grow. The conversation we've had today has been, what is the main sustainable source of revenue you've got? Now,
we talked very little about historical information. It has
been about
what's it about moving forward, and that's so important. There's a guy on LinkedIn. If you're listening, Dave Holland, there's your credit. And his analogy was something along all the likes of when you're driving your car and you're looking ahead, your rear view mirrors own like 15% of what your vision of what you're seeing, and actually you should appropriate that much attention to it, and the rest should be about looking forward.
100%. And if you are growing business, if you're looking at historicals, the historicals aren't where you are now, so you're focusing on a smaller business than where it is sort of 6 months further down the line. And I mean, particularly with COVID at the moment, you know, it's really important that businesses are aware of their financials and are looking forward, because I think, God, so many businesses have had such a crap sort of 6 months, and there are some businesses that are really on the breadline. There are some businesses that are doing really, really well. But almost, if you're one of those businesses that you're really struggling and you're, you know, some people just don't know where the cash is coming next week to pay the wages. And the problem is, if you're constantly looking back at the previous historical financials and not looking forward, you can't see your way of getting out of this black hole you're in. It's a bit like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, if you've got up-to-date financial information, you can see your business slowly picking up and coming out of the black with COVID. It almost gives you the momentum and the wheels start turning in the business, and you can see the improvement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know like in this business, we do our cash flow forecasting. We're in a 26-week forecast at the moment. We've argued the toss on whether we want to do more or less, but
26 weeks is impressive for, I mean, most businesses it's normally week to week, isn't it? But
it's a weekly forecast for 26 weeks.
Yeah.
And we also, so the way we approach our forecasting as well is we always forecast pessimistically. So it's a case of actually, if we stopped doing stuff today, at what point are we going to, oh my God.
Yeah.
So we've done that for a while now. And that, I mean, you've obviously seen our numbers, and you know what our cash was like 15 years ago. You know what our cash is like now, and that's reaped dividends.
And all this is a bit like, I always say to clients that are reluctant to do management accounts, they're reluctant to do their cash flow planning, and yes, if your accountant does it, there is going to be an additional fee. And you know, I appreciate at the moment with a lot of businesses there's a lot of sensitivity around fees, but the way I look at forecasts is, I wouldn't drive from here to the centre of London without a sat nav.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got your forecast, in effect, you are getting in your car with absolutely no petrol in the car.
And a blindfold.
And you don't know where you're going to stop for fuel.
And you've got a leg amputated.
I know, yeah. And I can remember, I'm one of these annoying people that hate filling their car with petrol. My next car will be electric. I only do 2,000 miles a year, and that's all I do. Yeah. But if we go on large journeys, it's in the family car.
Right. Okay.
But my little buzz bomb only does 2,000 miles a year.
Wow.
But we play this petrol game. I don't like filling it with petrol, and it's that feeling. There's the adrenaline of beating the light, but then there is actually when you are close, really, really close, and you're going into that petrol station on fumes, where you're thinking, oh crap. And that is what it's like if you haven't got your financials in place, if you haven't got a forecast in place, if you haven't got management accounts. And by management accounts, for small micro businesses, it doesn't necessarily even have to mean a full set of posting depreciation, posting accruals. It is purely with tools like Xero. As long as your bank's reconciled, it's just pulling off a cash profit and loss account. And so you can see where you are, even if you are looking this month against last month at the moment. I just think it's just really important for businesses to keep an eye on where they are. And again, like these, digressing a bit, these cloud software now that's coming, the thing I love about the relationships I'm having with clients, I mean, we've been quite lucky with Bespoke because you've always had remote access. We've always been able to.
We're an IT company.
Yeah,
Carrie.
I know.
Well, if our remote access didn't work, really.
But even 10 years ago, you know, if you had a question, we could tap into your server, we could look at the financial information there and then, and we could offer you advice. So again, you know, we've got a couple of clients, they're absolutely flying or they're really struggling.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And certainly from my point of view, a lot of that was mindset of the business owner.
100%.
The people that were struggling, they were the ones that were there going, woe is me, my life is hard, oh my God. And then the people that were flying were like, yeah, we're just doing... And it didn't matter what the industry was either.
No, I mean, there are some industries, like I've got a couple of travel agent clients, and there is nothing that they can do because
Totally out of their
nobody's
hands.
fine. That is out of their hands. But to be fair to one of those clients, she's phoned up today and she said, look, I'm just going to get a part-time job just to sort of keep me ticking over. And what we've done with this client is instead of cancelling all her bookings, she just keeps postponing them.
Yeah.
So she knows that the business will be there eventually.
Yeah.
So it's just because she knows the business will be there eventually, she's looking at a stopgap.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I've talked about it on social media. The biggest thing at the moment, and those that are doing really well, is those that have pivoted.
So, okay, technical question for you then.
Yeah.
Difference between pivoting and profiteering. So for me, pivoting is like, okay, so we make bread and we sell it in the shops, but what we're going to do is instead of selling it in the shops, we might do some home delivery. So we're taking our core business, day-to-day core business, we've changed one or two things to do that delivery completely different to how we've always done it, but it's going to keep like the number of restaurants that have gone into home delivery. For
Exactly,
example.
that's pivoting. And the best pivot I've got is not only has one of my restaurant clients gone to pivoting into home delivery, but they've worked out that if you deliver cold, it's at 0 rated VAT. So they have completely pivoted to a restaurant in-house, to a Meals on Wheels service, to the shielding.
Okay, that's cool.
So that to me is pivoting because they are not going into any new industry. They're just taking what they did and working out like these are the constraints I've got. People can't come in the restaurant. How can I take my food to my customers?
Yeah. So I had one yesterday, and we were talking about taxes, and obviously people haven't been able to go out as much or don't want to go out as much, and there are now taxi drivers that they're using their taxes to do deliveries for the likes of Just Eat and other food delivery services are available. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you've got to get something from A to B, whether that's a person, whether that's a portion of food, nobody cares. No. And that makes sense. But then from a profiteering point of view, so the one that I've got in mind, this person, so I'll stick to the baker's analogy, they make bread, but then what they've done is they've seen an opportunity to do candlesticks. And it's just completely different. Yeah. And there's plenty, and for this particular example, because it was PPE as well, and obviously we were in a phase where PPE was hard to come by. Cost of face mask, if you go to the services, you want a pack of 3 face masks, it's £3.50. Hand wash per litre, the price on that quadrupled or whatever it was. And literally all they've done is they've used their supply chain to get hold of this product, stick their 10% or whatever margin they've got on it, and then fog it. There's no alignment to what they do.
No, and I don't agree with that because that's down to people's moral stance, I suppose.
Yes.
Like I can remember we stopped off in a petrol station on the way on holiday, and it was £5 for one of the mini bottles of hand gel. Now he didn't buy that hand gel in for £4, did he? He'd have bought that.
He's been sat on it for 3 years and paid pittance. Yeah.
And again, and I can remember there's been a Facebook post about one of them. He's not a client of mine, but my husband knows him, and I felt quite sorry for him because he was genuinely trying to get PPE out to people when you couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And again, he ended up having to put on social media how much this PPE cost him.
Yeah.
Because he was getting that much abuse about trying to sort of profiteer out of COVID.
Yeah.
And really he wasn't trying to profiteer, it's genuinely his
costs
gone up because the suppliers have put it up.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with profiteering in respect of, especially when there's like, you hear cases of the NHS, and again a friend of mine is a care worker and they couldn't get hold of PPE.
Yeah, well we've got a number of clients in health and social care, so we see this. So there's a care provider in our building that we look after, and you see the boxes of PPE turn up. So they'll have a big 7.5-ton van turn up outside, and it's box after box after box after box of gloves and masks and all the rest of the PPE. So we've got a few clients where they're buying this stuff, and literally some of them have had to go completely round the houses. I was talking to a client last week before, and I think he said he's got a mate who's got a mate or another mate, and they've got a factory out in China, and they're using the channels out in China to import. What were they importing? I think it was face masks or gloves, but they've literally had to use their connections from a logistics point of view to get this PPE from a faraway place, because locally the prices have gone. I mean, we saw it with laptops, because obviously that great rush for home working.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Well, we got to a point where literally one of our main distributors, on any given day, I've always joked about this in the past. If a customer comes to me and says, "Chris, I want to buy a laptop," and I'll log into I've literally done this with them. I've logged into the distributor's site. Give me a list of every laptop, 2,000. Tick the box, in stock only, 400, 430. Okay, which one of these 400 laptops would you like? When we got to the point in the height of lockdown that if I tick the box to say, just give me the stuff that's in stock, 1, 2 models, then you've got like these, what I would call home user laptops, consumer grade laptops, where the guts inside are just not up to much, and you normally spend £300-400.
That's wrong.
That's ultimately it's supply and demand.
Yeah, it is, and you are going to be.
It's not great.
No, it's not, and the thing is, especially when there are a lot of businesses that needed that equipment just to keep the wheels turning.
Yeah.
Okay, you can talk about disaster recovery plans and people should have it.
Yeah, but after the horse has bolted, it's a bit late.
Yeah, it is. And, we were quite lucky because we're all cloud-based, so we could literally unplug and replug at home. But it is wrong to be profiteering out of other people's misfortune, really. And I think, it's a bit like, it's the whole keep calm and carry on thing, isn't it? Going back to, we were in a pandemic, we should be pulling together, not sort of like trying to make huge amounts of profits out of things, and going back to what I was saying, when I say to pivoting, it is literally saying, this is the core of what we do at the business, so how can I get what we do to my customers now? I mean, a great one is we were talking about the 90s event at Shropshire Festivals.
Yes.
A lot of people were feeling a lot low and a bit like caged bulls. And
it was a great night.
And, I hate to think what the mental health impact of all this is going to be, but just to be able to put on something like that 90s show, just to provide a good night to people, to pick them up, a way to socialise, not that you could socialise normally, but, and again, I think it was Shropshire Festival, wasn't it, that did that?
Yeah, that was Beth and her team.
Hats off to them, because all their events have been cancelled. So not only did they get some income through the door, they also and even if they made a loss on that show, and I'm not their accountant, so I won't know, so I'm not saying that they have, but even if they did make a loss on the show, the brand awareness.
Yeah. But if they're looking for a new accountant,
I
want to come back to what you just said about mental health, and I want to come back to a comment about, so when you took Joseph Lewis and you sold that proportion of your business, and you were saying about work life and how business was taken over, and that was interfering at home. We've obviously just touched on mental health, the impact of lockdown, and getting out and stuff. How important is it for people in business to look at self-care, how they handle that work-life balance? And if you were going to throw one thing out there that said, this is going to put you in a better place, what's that mean to you?
Like, for me, mental health is a big, big thing. Like, when I sold the business, I couldn't cope. I was really struggling, and for me, trying to juggle being a mom and working full time, I wasn't effective at anything. So if you carry on, I was thinking, I always call it burnout, but I burn out. And what happens is, if you don't, it's a bit like when you're on an aeroplane in emergency, they ask you to put your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
So if you don't take time out for the business, and you don't have reflective time, you don't have hobbies or interests you do, in effect for me, if all you do is work and don't take that break, you end up on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And it's so important. I mean, I just joke with you about looking at I think your diary's great, but I joke with you, where's Chris time in this? And what I mean is, I don't mean like a day at a health spa. I mean just an hour out of the day on your own to have a cup of coffee. And
you didn't see any lunch breaks in there, did you?
No. And I've just said to you before we did this podcast to eat your lunch before we started, because what was it, 3 o'clock and you hadn't eaten your lunch. And I sound like I'm talking to one of my kids now.
Thanks, Mum.
But no, you need to take time for yourself as a business owner. Not only do you need to take time out for yourself, you need to take time out to work on the business. That is so important. And now, in Spotlight over the last quarter, we've actually pulled the marketing activity down, because my goal this quarter has been to get our together really in the office, so systems and processes, and I've really had put a microscope over what we do. So we're looking at a new client management system, we're looking at how we onboard people, and looked at the client experience as a whole. Now I take a Wednesday working from home, and on that Wednesday I have a morning of working on the 90-day plan as people do it, and I chunk off a thing each week, and then I go for a run, and that's scheduled in. I do a lot of running anyway, but I go for a run on that Wednesday, and that's because what I find is, because I've had that space away from the staff and away from distractions, my head's going bonkers with things we need to do. So, and on that run I will detangle the spaghetti brain, I'll get home, I mean, my PA absolutely dreads it, because then she gets an email of all the things we need to do.
Yeah, I know that. So we've got I don't know if you've come across Roger, he's got the local group for Vistage, and
I'm in conversation with Roger actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a member of one of Roger's groups for probably coming up 18 months, might even be coming up for 2 years now. And he's going to be a future guest, or a latter guest, depending on when we publish these, on the podcast. And it's that, I think what I've just taken from what you've just said, you're not robust, wrong word, you're structured and disciplined to take your Wednesdays for business development time. I've got that as a Monday afternoon in my diary. That's my time for doing that. And then, like with Vistage, I've got that one-to-one with Roger, so we've got that personal development, that business development, we've got the power of the group. So yesterday was our group meeting, so there were probably a dozen of us in the room, and we're all business owners, we're all in the same mud, crawling our way through, we've all got the same issues, whether that, I mean, the previous business coach said to me, it's all time people, whatever your problem, it's going to be time. And it's just the power of taking that time to reflect on your business. And one of the things that came out yesterday, so we've recruited 3 new people this year. I wasn't the only one in the room. God, one of the members, they're in a leisure and tourism industry, and obviously because of lockdown restriction on movement's been a bit of a problem. They've had, over the course of the summer, I think their year started on the 1st of May. They've already been last year. Or some daft statistic. I can't remember the exact numbers that were kicking around, but he is pounding the hell out of last year, and he's flying, and he's taken the time to work on his business. He's taken the time to reflect on himself. Big thing that came up yesterday was self-care and about taking time. And
it's so important, because like for me, I call it fuzzy head, and I know that I'm getting to the point that I need to take time out, because I'm snappy with the kids. My husband will talk to me, and I'll be like, what?
Yeah.
You just need that break. You just need that. I'm reading a book at the moment. I can't for the life of me think of what it's called. It's on my Kindle, so you don't see the title, do you? But so what this book talks about is the importance of thinking time.
Absolutely.
how you need, if you've got a problem, you need to just completely step away and have thinking time. And then if you're not getting answers to your question, you need to go away and rewrite your question.
Okay, reframe
and
the question.
Reframe it,
Yeah.
And I just think for me, time out from the business is just so important.
Listening to a podcast this morning talking about how a lot of great business leaders now are self-reflecting, meditating, and taking that time just to stop and think.
Yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about is when people say they're working on the business, I think a lot of people that don't do this think, oh crap, they're doing like high level business plans, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're not. So part of our quarterly target is we're trying to de-carify the business, as in all the things I interfere. And I said to you, didn't I, I am a recovering control freak.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to do when you to go from a sole trader to a business, to be able to step away from a lot of the operational stuff. So part of my working on the business is I will sit with a cup of tea, I'll scroll through all my sent emails last week, and I will note all the things that I dealt with that I shouldn't have dealt with.
I like that.
And the girls will then give me a list of things that I've dealt with that they think they should have dealt with.
Yeah, I like that, Carrie. That's a great idea.
So that's not creating a big business plan. That is just looking at...
It's reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is literally reflection.
And it's amazing, all the little habits, because that's what I'm saying, I'm a recovering control freak. It's habits that I've got into that you do automatically. And it's been really good to sort of like have the girls actually say, no, you shouldn't be doing that.
Mm-hmm. Do you give your PA your inbox?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And, we're only sort of like 2-3 weeks into having my inbox, but God, that makes so much difference.
Yeah.
Just not having to deal with the junk, not having to deal with the sales pitch. I'm really tempted to give them my LinkedIn inbox because I'm absolutely fed up of people connection requests and then the sales pitch. So I think that's the next step I'm going to give them.
That's interesting. What's your approach with LinkedIn? If somebody gives you a connection request, are you generally taking it?
I generally, it depends what in message they've given me. If they give me a sales message, then no. But if it's if it's connection for connection, I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit similar. I've had for a long time. I was very resistant, and it's like at one point I could confidently say I knew 80-90% of my connections, but I think it's turned a corner. And I'm ruthless at getting binning off connections when they just try and pitch.
LinkedIn has been a great tool to the growth of their business. So we have not I would say 75% of the clients we've taken on recently are not local.
Okay.
From up in Newark to London.
So what would you put that down to?
It's a lot of what we've taken on is down to the videos I did when lockdown hit with the support.
Okay.
I think a lot of accountants, like we were talking about before, got to the point that lockdown hit and the overwhelm hit, and they just pulled the hatches in, battened the windows up, and just did not contact their clients.
When actually, that's probably the time that could have been the most helpful, the most useful, and these are the business issues that you're going to have. This is how to, I guess there's a video there, 5 things to preserve your cash flow.
Yeah. And what I did, rightly or wrongly, is we own the premises that our offices are in, and I let them out. So my premises costs aren't that great. Mm-hmm. So I had the £10,000 grant, which we were entitled to, and then when we took the grant, I wasn't quite sure where it was going, whether I'd have to completely shut down the business or not. And as it happened, we carried on. So what I decided was that £10,000 would be used to help clients. So I wrote off the time to do the CBILS application, helped with the furlough grant, and that's why we've done well out of COVID. Not done well out of COVID. That's why our client base has grown as a result of COVID, because we genuinely do care about our clients, and we do want them to succeed. And it's not just me that feels like that. The 3 girls that work for me are exactly the same. They want to help. Claire B, bless her, has done all the furlough claims now. She's been working till 11, 12 o'clock at night for clients, just in her own time, just to get the furlough claims out so that people could get paid. I mean, in the end, it got to the point that we did charge for furlough, and I just charged costs, and what I charged, I passed on to Claire, because she was the one that was burning the midnight oil.
Doing the work, doing the
I just didn't see the COVID grants and the COVID claims as a time for me to be profiteering as an accountant.
Yeah, you've obviously got a cost that you've got to recover your cost, but there's a difference between covering your costs and making a pretty penny.
We will never ever be the cheapest accountants, but we're not the most expensive.
I'm glad you didn't say anything about putting my prices up.
Oh, actually, no.
Hang on a minute.
But going back to LinkedIn, because of doing those videos during COVID, lots of people have come on board with us because they've seen that we're proactive, and I hate that word proactive, but we generally are proactive. And we've had a large client come on recently that we act as a virtual finance department for them, and it's great because I ask you a question and I get the answer in English. You don't speak Accountanese.
Yeah, I totally get that, and we can talk in TLAs and FLAs all day long, and people are going to be like, Chris, what the hell are you on about? And that's the quickest way to lose somebody.
And I think that's how we've done well. And again, going back to clients that have people that have pivoted, or people that generally offer a good level of customer services are doing well at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, without question, they will be flying.
Yeah.
So what do you think 2021 is going to bring for your business?
For Spotlight, so 2021, I'm taking on no more staff at the moment.
You've just had a bit of a rampage.
So I have gone from 18 months ago, it was just me, to there are 3 of us now.
Okay.
For the first time ever, and again, I think it's a lesson that you learn as you go through business. Is I used to wait till we were at capacity and we burst at the seams and then recruit.
Okay. Yeah.
And then because you're in such a desperate need to recruit, you end up...
You're always chasing your tail. Yeah.
And you always end up frustrated that you can never find the staff that you need to fit in with your core values.
Yeah.
So for the first time ever with plan number 2, I have recruited before we needed it. Basically, we had this virtual finance client come on board, and we've got capacity. So because not only have we got capacity, I've got time, this was the perfect opportunity for me to get our systems and processes right.
Yeah.
So for us in 2021, the focus is going to be on rolling out our virtual finance department offering, because I really think it's important more than ever now for business owners to have that visibility over where the business is.
So last season we were asking what people's tech couldn't live without technology with. This season it's, what is that piece of tech you can't stand, you want to get rid of, put it in room 101. What is it for you, Carrie?
I would put Sage in room 101.
Do you know what? I'd help you with that. As somebody that's had to support many a business through upgrades and installs.
And if you use Sage, there are much better alternatives. So for me, if I go back to my background, I was trained on Sage. I grew up with Sage, and I used to love Sage. But again, Sage is, and I'm going to put Iris accounting software in room 101 as well with this, for the same reasons. They may even be owned by the same company, probably not. For the reason that Sage and Iris are no different on how they operate from when I started training back in 1998.
And I would back that up and say the underlying technology hasn't really evolved much either in terms of how things are installed, where things live on your network, how the data's accessed. It's not really evolved much either. And what we've seen is, we've got another update to Sage. Sorry, what? You've got to upgrade your computer. So rather than develop the product, or they've changed the look and feel of the product, and I don't think QuickBooks is any different with that. The desktop is any different with that either. But what we've seen with Sage is that push of oh, our minimum spec is you need to, and at one point, okay, a gig network now is commonplace, but at one point they were like, when 10100 was still all the rage, and Sage is there going, nah, you need a gig network for this. I'm like, what? Really?
It's
more memory?
Yeah,
more disk?
It's just so archaic, and their cloud product is a lot better. But for example, we've got a couple of clients that still use it. Now, for me to access their data, Sage want me to pay £300 a year for a client manager license. They won't. It's just all about. It's all about cost. It's all about charging. It's not about the user experience. So you've got things like Zero, and
I know you love.
I'm like a Zero geek. I love Zero. But like Zero gives you that functionality, so you can. QuickBooks Online does and Sage Online does, but Sage is like going from the Amstrad CPC 464, where you used to have to wait 20 minutes for Roland on the ropes to load, to being given an iPhone. I am showing my age now, and I keep saying to my kids, you really need to appreciate like how long Mummy used to have to wait to play a game on Friday.
Did you see the video we put up on LinkedIn with the dial-up modem?
No.
Yeah, we found an old video of dial-up. We put that up.
I think they need it, but that's why I would put Sage in Room 101. It just doesn't provide the functionality businesses need, and this isn't me trying to sell software. This is the end project. This is the user experience. This is being able to pull out of a financial accounting package what you need to run the business, And then, like, again, with a cloud-based product, and why I'd put Sage into Room 101 is when we talked about pubs closing, for example. Zero and other, I'm sure QuickBooks does it, and I'm sure Sage Online does it, but we don't tend to use those products. But Zero will link into an app called Float, for example.
Right.
So you'd have a cash flow in Float, and you do what-if analysis.
Yeah.
So what if my pub's closed for 3 weeks? What would be the impact of that? And you can go through and you can map it out for business owners. So it's with the times, really, with the technology, and there's just. I don't understand Sage.
So, Carrie, thank you very much for coming and doing an episode for the podcast with us. I think my takeaway is definitely self-care, reflection, personal development, and then ignoring all of that, customer experience.
Yeah.
And actually, people are engaging us to do IT or to do accountancy, engaging us for that experience, for our expertise, for our
People buy our
absolutely everything. Brilliant.
Thank
Carrie,
you
thank you very much.